Freedom Reigns Radio Network is not responsible for the views and opinions of the guests or hosts of this show. The views and opinions expressed in this show are strictly the views and opinions of guests or hosts of this program.
Hello, everybody. Yes, the truth shall set you free. This is your host, David Meola, coming at you live. Yeah, we got a late start today. I had a real bad storm passing through earlier, but it seems to have finally moved on its way. That's all right. My garden needed it. It's growing and doing well. July 2nd, I believe, right as of now, there is going to be a live interview broadcast. I believe it's going to be 2 o'clock Eastern Time. I will get you more information on that as I get all the confirmation. I just found out about it a little while ago. Anyhow, since we really don't have nothing else covered, and Chris has joined us in the chat room tonight, and I totally forgot, and it is uploaded on the board. We're going to play part 2 of that 2 or 3 part series. I think there may be a short part after this that I have not got on the board yet to end it. This goes back to one of our state nationals, along with L.B. Bork, of course, the founder of the People's Awareness Coalition, and our textbook, The Red Amendment. I'm talking fast because we don't have much time, and this recording is an hour and 18 minutes, so we're going to have just enough time to get it in without running into OT tonight. With that being said, we're going to continue part 2, and I will get that updated and all for you guys on the YouTube with the description as soon as I can. Once the show's over, we'll get that uploaded for you. Thanks again for joining us. Kick back, give a listen to the real State Nationals, and we'll talk to you later.
Well, good evening. This is The Ultimate Remedy. My name is L.B. Bork. Hope you're doing well this evening. Today is February 4th in the year of our Lord 2009. Hope everyone is doing well. We're going to be continuing the conversation from the last 2 weeks with Jeff in Florida. I would like to thank Jeff for bringing up this topic to go over. It's gotten a lot of popular responses from a lot of people. And, of course, what we're talking about is Section 2 of the 14th Amendment. It's been, I don't know, basically the grounds for my research. And the Red Amendment, my book, has been in-depth on that topic. And Jeff is one of the few people that has really picked it up and taken off with it. And he's studied a lot, and I wanted to thank him for doing that, because there's very few people out there that pick up the ball and run with it. But anyway, like I said, I'm a little out of sorts tonight. So, Jeff, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Great.
Exciting greetings from the Florida Republic.
Yes. How you doing?
Very well, very well. Wanted to also thank John Ainsworth of ncrepublic.org for helping out with the understanding of the Reconstruction Acts.
Right. Good,
as well.
Good call. Thanks.
And if anybody has the chance, check out NC Republic. He abbreviated NC for North Carolina. Just as a recap, and at the expense of being repetitive to those that have been faithfully listening, I kind of have to set up this background for people that have just tuned in, that have not tuned in before. So if you could please be patient, it would be appreciated. And I do thank those that took the time to email for the notes. There will be an article that we're going over tonight called Criminal Ignorance on the second half of the show, and that we'll be able to disseminate that via email. All you have to do is email me at my email address, which will be provided at the end of the show. So please email me for that article. Those that are already on the list, please don't email me for that article. You will get it. And the premise that we're talking about is that the thing to grasp is that before the 14th Amendment, there was one state, and then after the 14th Amendment, a whole new state was created, but did not necessarily abolish the original state. And when I say state, I mean an individual state. So since I'm from Florida, I'll use Florida as an example. Prior to the 14th Amendment, there was the state of Florida enacted by Congress in 1845. after 1868, the 14th Amendment, a new state of Florida was created of people that had 14th Amendment federal citizenship status combined with a quasi-state citizenship to where it's actually recognized as secondary to that of a primary federal citizenship, which emanates ultimately out of Washington, D.C. So, being of that latter state, that is the 14th Amendment state, the federal citizenship state, that is an unlawful body politic that was created. Now, the word body politic also means state. It also means the word nation is synonymous. According to the law of nations, which is known these days as international law, but Amor Vital, the whole premise behind a state was originally intended by the drafters of the 14th Amendment to be reflected of that as from the law of nations. So, nation, state, body politic, same thing. Those are words I use interchangeably. So, there's one state that existed of state citizens, which were Florida state citizens, and then their body politic was unlawfully displaced, maybe even extinguished, some people killed, via the Reconstruction Acts, which was an unlawful declaration of war in times of peace by the 39th Congress, in which they said that they forced the states to ratify this 14th Amendment at gunpoint, the southern states. Once that was ratified, this new body politic was formed, and the old body politic was essentially usurped, but not necessarily in law abrogated. Just it's been in suspension, but the framework for it exists. So that means since that federal citizenship was colorably imposed through the 14th Amendment, that means even a non-southern state that wasn't involved in the Civil War or a northern state that was involved in the Civil War, their state citizenship got displaced in favor of a unlawful federal citizenship emanating out of D.C., i.e. a de facto state. So in your notes, you're going to see that a de facto state's unlawful, that's sitting there by paramount force, and that a de jure state is of rightful, lawful title, as in your pre-14th Amendment state. And so the gist of this is that if one retains this 14th Amendment federal citizenship status, they're in essence rebelling against their de jure lawful state status by virtue that the Reconstruction Acts imposed that state by unconstitutional martial law powers. So if you are not doing anything to rebut this presumption, then in essence you're presumed to be engaged in a crime against your rightful de jure state. And what we call that are basically silent emergency powers that allows the federal government to, in essence, ignore the law because of the emergency. In a state of emergency, the laws get thrown out the window. So there's this silent emergency going on that very few people know about or understand. But according to law, according to what's on the books and the facts that have happened, this 14th Amendment body politic has been sitting there unlawfully through martial law powers, and it's been perpetual military law powers as long as that body politic's instilled. So whatever you say, you may know about this, but if you haven't done anything about it, you're presumed to be a rebel. You're rebelling against your lawful de jure state by retaining your federal citizenship status. And evidences of that are your driver's license, passport, social security number, the whole nine. You might have a tag, a car tag registered in your name. All of these things force a presumption that you're of this federal citizenship status. A birth certificate. There's a book called Invisible Contracts by George, Mercier that goes into this much more in detail. And if you wish to look up, I have to see if this article's still online. It was called Petition to Investigate, written by a guy in Alaska regarding the Reconstruction Acts, and he was completely ignored. And I'm right now I'm trying to search for this online because this will bolster your understanding of this as well, in addition to my notes. But this goes much more, and I can't find it, so I'm going to have to look for it on break online because I did download it. Anytime you see a good article, folks, just save it to your hard drive because it could get offline right away too. So,
Jeff.
Yeah. Was
that Ralph Winterroad?
No, I don't believe
someone
so.
else?
It could have been, though.
Yeah.
It was a very well-researched... Ralph doesn't go into that kind of stuff, though.
He does or doesn't?
Doesn't. What we're saying, in short, is, are you a criminal? And we're asking this in regard to the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. If the method of representation for the states of the Union was referenced in the body of the original Constitution under Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution, why is it being discussed again in the 14th Amendment under Section 2? You see that? See, if the 14th Amendment didn't instill a whole new body politic, then how come, in other words, nobody was represented before the 14th Amendment? 14th Amendment talks about a type of representation. So why would they need to amend the Constitution if they weren't talking about a whole new form of representation? Wouldn't you say that's the gist of it, LB?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, I think, like I've told people for a long time, the only people, technically, that these insurgents represent are people that are voting for them. The other people are put in legal limbo land, and they're presumed to be represented. I mean, the formula is clear in Section 2 of the 14th Amendment that the apportionment is only regarded to the amount of people that are voting. So the problem that people face is, they're lumped into these people that are voting and committing rebellion against their de jure state.
An amendment, whenever a Constitution has an amendment, that means that something wasn't discussed or before and they need to add it as an addendum, or it's completely repealing something or changing something, right? And it's because it's amended, right? So obviously, state representation had to have been discussed in the original 1789 Constitution in Article 1. So how come they're talking about it again in the 14th Amendment? That's what we're talking about. So was it really formally repealed, the Article 1 representation? Or were the state constitutions just altered to adapt to that federal 14th Amendment citizenship, which started with the southern states forcing to adopt it and then being colorably expelled, even though they really weren't, and then colorably readmitted as a whole other state of 14th Amendment citizens, i.e. body politic. So another thing, did anyone in the original de jure southern state governments approve of that constitutional transition? Was it done voluntarily? Or was it done by force? We've really hammered that point the past three shows that it was definitely by force under the Reconstruction Acts, and those were constitutionally unauthorized martial law powers in times of peace, way after the Civil War, in times of presidentially proclaimed peace. So what we're discussing is the possibility that each person has to approve of the system established by the 14th Amendment by voting, or by not objecting, right, LB? By silence.
Right. There's a common law maxim that's been around for centuries that says if you don't object to something, it stands as true until protested. So that's the problem.
So you might not vote. You might have even done an excellent county, you might have put in the county record that I'm not a U.S. citizen and I don't vote. I canceled my voter's registration. But the thing is, if if you're not addressing the right points of law to the right people, to the right agencies, and just filing stuff at the county recorder, hoping that these insurgents and these agencies psychically know that you recorded it there, you're just spinning your wheels. So I discussed this in one of the first shows regarding this topic. President Johnson vetoed the Reconstruction Act 3 times. So, folks, look up Andrew Johnson's vetoes to the Reconstruction Act. It's very rich with information, and I got a lot of my material from there, from the notes. And it got me going on this research. Here's a quote. Here is a bill of attainder against 9 million people at once. He's talking about the southern states. He's talking about the Reconstruction Act being a bill of attainder against 9 million people. A bill of attainder, folks, is declaring a blanket declaration of guilt without any trial, without really naming any names or anything. That's a bill of attainder. And that's against the law in one of the articles of the Constitution, which was in my notes to the people last week that you got. I forget which one it was. Here's the following. So here's the quote. Here's a bill of attainder against 9 million people at once. It is based upon an accusation so vague as to be scarcely intelligible and found to be true upon no credible evidence. We discussed that last week, that the 39th Congress declared that the states should be denied representation because of the rebellion, even though the Civil War was over, even though there was already peace declared. And that's what he's talking about. There's no evidence that they were in rebellion. Here's the quote that continues. Not one of the 9 million was heard in his own defense. The representatives of the doomed parties were excluded from all participation in the trial. The conviction is to be followed by the most ignominious. I have to look that up. Have you ever looked that one up, LB?
No, I haven't. And,
ignominious. It must mean something.
My vocabulary is not bad, but
serious adjective there.
Yeah, the people's vocabularies are a lot better 150 years ago.
The conviction
it's
is
called
to be
public school education.
Sorry, go ahead. He continues, the conviction is to be followed by the most ignominious punishment ever inflicted on large masses of men. It disenfranchises them by hundreds of thousands. What he means by disenfranchisement is that the Reconstruction Act says, oh, these states are abolished, but now you can't participate in elections or representation unless you become a 14th Amendment federal citizen and adopt the 14th Amendment in your states. That's what he's talking about when he uses disenfranchises. Quote, it disenfranchises them by hundreds of thousands and degrades them all, even those who are admitted to be guiltless, from the rank of freedom to the condition of slaves. That the measure proposed by this bill, he's talking about the Reconstruction Act, that the measure proposed by this bill does violate the Constitution in the particulars mentioned, and in many other ways which I forbear to enumerate, is too clear to admit the least doubt. Pretty heavy-duty veto, guys. If only we had a president since 1868 that was as stand-up as Johnson. In my opinion, like people ask me, who's your favorite president? I always say President Andrew Johnson. Hands down. And so he vetoed this unconstitutional act, but the rump Congress, so this means an unlawful Congress, the 39th Congress expelled 11 states from representation in the House and Senate when they passed these Reconstruction Acts. That means the Congress was rump. It was incomplete. It wasn't fully seated by all of the states, or represented with all of the states in the Union in place. So therefore, that was a denial of a Republican form of government pursuant to Article 4, Section 4, and the representation was denied in pursuance to a violation of Article 5, Section 5 of the U.S. Constitution. It's in my notes. You folks will get it. That will get on my email list, which I will provide at the end of the show. So Congress pushed the act anyway in the midst of the vetoes. And remember, Johnson refers to the soon-to-be disenfranchised Southerners through the Reconstruction Acts. And then these Reconstruction Acts fermented into the 14th Amendment. So little do Americans know that this infamous amendment created a new governmental system which overruns the original Constitution's lawful political system. So,
yeah, all the body's politics are overridden by the 14th Amendment. It created new citizenship. The other one was dead, or the others were dead. And that's the long and the short of it. I just heard the tone. We're going to be running into break.
Find an article called Petition to Investigate the Ratification of the 14th Amendment, and it's written by a guy in Alaska, and it's really rich with information. However, let it be known that we do not, our position is not. We do not take the position with the courts that the 14th Amendment wasn't properly ratified, because that has been ruled to be a political argument. So we stick with constitutional law violations, statutes at large violations, and we show them how that deprives us of our substantial rights. So that becomes an in-law position rather than that one of politics. And also, if you go on ncrepublic.org and download John Ainsworth's, I think it was an appeal that, it was all based on a no driver's license case, quite captivating, and he goes into the Reconstruction Acts, and actually he had cases in there that showed there were people who were petitioning the Supreme Court in the southern states during the Reconstruction Acts in 1867. They were petitioning things all the way up to the Supreme Court, questioning the constitutionality of the Reconstruction Acts for the very reasons that Andrew Johnson brought up in his vetoes. Anyway, what happened, I think the cases was Ex parte McCardle and Georgia versus Stanton. Those are the two most notable cases I believe he cites. Don't have the citation numbers handy, but go to ncrepublic.org and cruise around for his Word document article, or actually petitions that he filed in court. Anyway, the gist of that is that the Supreme Court sat on those petitions and didn't hear them until Congress amended the Judiciary Act to say that the Supreme Court could not hear petitions.
Yeah, these guys are real criminals. They make up the rules as they go, and
we're looking at Section 2 of the 14th Amendment. This is really wordy, folks, so you really need it in front of you, because they're trying to enslave you by words. So that's why you need to read, and you can't just listen to us jack our jaws. You need to read it for yourself.
You know, I've had grammatical experts and English teachers and things of that nature. I've had several stories over the past years. They'll read this section, okay, and they'll come back to the people that asked them to read it and say, "Well, I can't do this. You have to ask a lawyer." Mm-hmm. And it's like telling me that they're scared the hell out of them, because the syntax in the sentence is undeniable once you do the sentence structure on it, or the what's the word I'm trying to look for? The diagramming of the sentence.
Diagramming, right?
Yes. So it always comes back like that because it scares the bejesus out of everyone. Anyway, go ahead, Jeff.
Here it is, Section 2, 14th Amendment. Representatives shall be apportioned among the several states according to their respective numbers, counting the whole number of persons in each state, excluding Indians not taxed. But when the right to vote at any election for the choice of electors or President and Vice President of the United States, representatives of Congress, the executive and judicial officer of the state, or the members of the legislature thereof, okay, they fill in a bunch of stuff in there to throw you off. So it's saying, but when the right to vote is denied. So I said, but when the right to vote at any election for the choice of electors or President and Vice President of the United States, representatives of Congress, the executive and judicial officers of the state, or the members of the legislature thereof, comma, is denied. So we can take that whole stuff that I just rambled on and start out, but when the right to vote is denied. Okay? We'll continue the sentence after is denied. But when the right to vote, etc., is denied to any of the male inhabitants of such state, being 21 years of age and citizens of the United States, or in any way abridged. Okay, so that's our next thing. So we have but when the right to vote is denied or in any way abridged, except for participation in rebellion or other crime, the basis of representation therein shall be reduced in the proportion which the number of such male citizens shall bear to the whole number of male citizens 21 years of age in each state. That's just a mouthful, folks. You really need to read this. And we're going to send you an article, one of the first of a few. We're actually going to camp out. We're going to pitch a tent on the 14th Amendment, Section 2, probably for the next 2 or 3 weeks. We really want to hammer this. And you're going to have nice articles written by LB already regarding this for your own enlightenment. And so the syntax, if you have the 14th Amendment, Section 2 in front of you, which you should, so maybe you should pause this. If you're listening to the archives, if there's a way to pause this, go ahead and pause this and look it up, and then resume, and here we go. So look, in Section 2, the right to vote, what we're saying is the syntax of it says when you take away the commas with those long sentences, the position is the right to vote at any election is denied except for participation in rebellion or other crime. So, unless...
It's a puzzle. It's a real puzzle.
Right.
This whole thing's a formula between Section 1 and 2 and 3.
See, and we've already
Section 4 of the 14th Amendment, they all work together. It's all a very deceptive puzzle.
And the 13th Amendment even sets that up also.
Oh, yeah, 13th. It even incorporates things within the 13th Amendment. These people that set this up, you have to understand they're very wicked. The Masonic Order is behind it, but the Masons aren't the true problem. They're just the foot soldiers for the people of the New World Order. They're just one faction of what has been going on. And if you read Albert Pike's book, Morals and Dogma, from the early or late 1800s, he talks about many things, and in there he said, I'm just going to paraphrase it, people are dumb, and if they're not with God, they need to be deceived. So these guys have helped people get deceived, which I think is evil.
Oh,
on its face, it's evil. But
while you're talking, there was an inquiry from a faithful listener out there named Ernie. He listens all the time. He's really cool. He emails us a lot, and he had this question. Remember you talked about Ed Vieira's suggestion of forming state militias and how it would put them under federal jurisdiction? He does not understand what you meant by that.
Now that they have this 14th Amendment in place, everyone's a 14th Amendment citizen. And by operations of law under the 14th Amendment, everyone is probably a 14th Amendment citizen if they're taking benefits from the government. So if the people of the states form militias and rebel against the federal government this time, if they choose to, which I think is suicide, it's insane, it's not too smart, they will be charged with treason this time, if they're not bright enough to argue what we're talking about tonight. So that's the problem with Vieira's position. And he does have my book, and I don't think he's read it. There are many factors to consider. The main one that someone has to understand, that the Bible sets forth that the borrower is servant to the borrower is servant, slave to the lender. That's Proverbs 22.7. Section 2 of the 14th Amendment turns people into natural persons. This is a legal entity. We know that God is not a respecter of persons. Acts 10:34. Section 2 of the 14th Amendment, by operation of law, makes people rebel against their lawful governments. The language in Section 2 actually states it is a crime to vote. So, now, in secular law, a person that is a slave cannot question his master. So, as a matter of law, people have rebelled against God, and they have rebelled against their lawful states. And, of course, Section 4 of the 14th Amendment says the public debt shall not be questioned and a slave can't question anything. So, of course, this is used against people. Like I said a few minutes ago, these people are very evil that have done this. And the people that want to be deceived will be deceived, because that's a maxim of law. It's been around for thousands of years also. And these people are using this law against all of you. And if you don't have the Spirit of God in you, you're going to be a slave. Anyway, I'm getting down off the soapbox now, okay? Continue, Jeff.
Ernie, I hope that answers your question. Sounds to me like it did. If you're presumed to be a 14th Amendment citizen, you're not smart enough to create the record and establish that, and then you start raising arms, then you're really engaged in an insurrection and rebellion against your slave master. That's the short of it. So, and then, so what we're looking at, 14th Amendment, Section 2, what we're saying by the syntax, quote, the right to vote at any election is denied, except for participation in rebellion or other crime. Now, we established that with the 14th, with the Reconstruction Act, these two past shows, that if you didn't disavow your old state and accept the military installed government of the Reconstruction Act, you could not vote. And you were denied representation and the right to vote if you didn't participate. But because that's an unlawful military jurisdiction under the 14th Amendment, you're actually rebelling against your original state jurisdiction. So they're actually admitting that. We're saying Section 2 admits that and says, look, unless you're participating in a rebellion or other crime, you cannot vote. So anyway, it goes on. The basis of representation therein shall be reduced in the proportion which the number of such male citizens. Now, what we're saying is that such male citizens are the ones voting, the citizens of the United States.
It's the only citizens that are mentioned in the formula, and they're citizens of the United States pursuant to Section 1 of the 14th Amendment.
Right.
So these are all operations of law, and those are things that happen because of words in the amendment of the Constitution. People need to understand that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and everything is governed by it. However, it's not paramount. The paramount law is the law of God. And that's why I get so fed up and frustrated with atheists and non-believers, because they just don't get it. These people are using the Bible against them, and they don't even know it. The Bible is the best freedom book there is available to man on earth.
That's right.
And, these people have been taught to reject it. And the first page of my book, I go into that. Albert Pike stated it in his Morals and Dogma, that the deceived, because they're not believers, need to be deceived. So they're taking advantage of everyone. Sorry, got off on a tangent there.
Hey, we're on a spiritual kick. It's good.
Yeah.
So it's saying the basis, this is quoting the 14th Amendment, the basis of representation therein shall be reduced in the proportion in which the number of such male citizens. So we're saying, okay, PAC, LB, and People's Awareness Coalition, we're saying that the ones voting, citizens of the United States, these new federal citizens with this new federal citizenship status that was non-existent, or at least not presumed to be upon everybody. We're saying these are the ones that are participating in elections, which is the rebellion, by supporting this new insurgent government with a new 14th Amendment body politic, okay? So it's saying that this representation of people, that these people, okay, this is quoting the 14th Amendment, shall bear to the whole number of male citizens 21 years of age in such state. So, LB, would you say the whole number are the ones that are de jure and the ones that are de facto?
Yeah, because if you look at the first sentence, it includes everyone for representation.
Right, so there's two classes of people.
All they can do is go down from there, okay, be less.
Right.
So they're including everyone as persons in the first sentence, which is, I just mentioned a minute ago, this whole formula turns everyone into legal entities. We only got 30, 40 seconds left, Jeff, so why don't you tell the people about...
let me shoot the email off to people. Hey, people that have not got on the email list to get articles, show notes, you need to email me at floridarepublic@gmail.com. floridarepublic@gmail.com. Email me. You'll get the article that we've been reading off of called Criminal Ignorance. And we're going to go more into that next week. We got about halfway through it, but you'll have a good idea of what we're talking about.
Okay. Brother Gregory next week, I'm hoping.
All right.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, we'll see you in 2 weeks, folks. Sorry.
Well, good evening. This is L.B. Bork. This is the Ultimate Remedy. Today is February 11th in the year of our Lord 2009. I hope everyone's doing well this week. And without further ado, I think Jeff's in the background there. I'm going to let him do most of the talk tonight, why it's a crime to vote. And, of course, the operations of law that are covered under Section 2 of the 14th Amendment tonight. So, anyway, I'm sure you have an agenda or itinerary tonight.
Well, it's pretty much picking up from where we left off on the article available from PAC, authored by LB, called Criminal Ignorance. For those that are just tuning in, and at the expense of being repetitive to those who have been tuning in the past few weeks, we've been going over how the Reconstruction Acts imposed the 14th Amendment unlawfully through unauthorized martial law powers, how that in turn imposed a federal citizenship which was pretty much not really existent prior to the 14th Amendment. It was existent, but it was not a single unified federal citizenship was not presumed to be upon everyone as it was after the 14th Amendment, and that's what this did. And it in turn imposed a new body politic, which we went over is a new state, a new nation, so a false nation, really. So, in other words, the old Constitution prior to the 14th Amendment is actually a different Constitution, which was under a body politic of state citizens, and their state constitutions were implemented by state citizens as well, because those legislatures were populated by state citizens. However, after the 14th Amendment, your body politic are federal citizens, but again, we don't claim to be state citizens. We claim to be state nationals because there's no body politic existent right now. There's no legislatures of state citizens, so it's impossible. Anyway, the thrust of this is, though, because that 14th Amendment citizenship was imposed unlawfully under the color law through unauthorized martial law powers, to retain that status or even to not challenge that status and claim your lawful state nationality, you're actually committing a crime and you may not even know it. That's why this article is called Criminal Ignorance. So we will continue. What we said is that the syntax, and for me to dictate the exact language of Section 2 of the 14th Amendment is actually not really as helpful as if you look at it in print. So I encourage you to go online and get the text of the 14th Amendment and scroll to Section 2. And what we're saying, and what I'm going to say is just the syntax of it. What we're saying is that the actual language says this. It says the right to vote at any election is denied except for participation in rebellion or other crime. Now, I did omit a great deal of language in there, but they put that language in there to really cloud it up. So, really, for one to claim allegiance to a 14th Amendment body politic, or even for one not to challenge it, they're presumed to be in rebellion towards their lawful state, which actually, under the color of law, allows these jokers in D.C. or your legislature to keep this rebellion under suppression. In other words, they're involved in martial law powers now because you're actually engaged in pledging your allegiance to a body politic implemented by martial law. So the right to vote, the only way you can have the right to vote is if you're participating in a crime. The crime being recognizing a 14th Amendment citizenship status, a 14th Amendment body politic composed of 14th Amendment citizens, recognizing that as legitimate and taking allegiance to that. So the basis of any representation is representing those citizens. They cannot represent people that don't want to ignore that system, such as us at State Nationals. And keep in mind, governments are instituted by the consent of the governed. So you may say, well, I haven't voted for years, and I know about all this stuff. I've quit using Social Security. You might say a whole lot of other things, but you might be carrying a driver's license around. You might be collecting Social Security. Now, you might not. You might even say, well, no, I don't want so. I don't have anything to do with Social Security. But the problem is, they're presuming, because you haven't objected, because you have not addressed the proper agencies with the proper position at law, they're presuming that you're consenting. So governments are instituted by the consent of the governed. So by not objecting, by not making a record of your objection, you're consenting to this 14th Amendment body politic government, which is completely based on unauthorized martial law powers. You're in rebellion. So they had to trick the people into voting for them. That's what they did. They expelled these southern states through the Reconstruction Acts, which we covered in great detail. Okay, it says the right to vote at any election, with a lot of other information omitted. The right to vote at any election is denied except for participation in rebellion or other crime. This goes on to state, the basis of representation therein shall be reduced in the proportion which the number of such male citizens, they're talking about the ones that are pledging allegiance to this new body politic, the ones voting, the citizens of the United States under the 14th Amendment, these new federal citizens that are participating in elections. So they're saying the basis of representation shall be reduced for them, the proportion of them in which these people, okay, the such male citizens, this is the direct language of the 14th Amendment, the number of such male citizens shall bear to the whole number of male citizens. Now, remember, LB, we covered last week, we said that the whole number of male citizens includes state nationals. Even though it says male citizens, the word citizens, it really incorporates us too, right?
Well, that's what I believe, but, they play games with us, and
yes,
like
they
I
do.
said millions of times, you can't participate in government unless you are a citizen. The Dred Scott case went over that. Mm-hmm. And, of course, that's, I think, propaganda to, was propaganda to pass the 14th Amendment, or lay the groundwork to set it up to get it approved, so to speak. So
the disenfranchised people, us, the state nationals, or the ones who were displaced at the Reconstruction Acts, the ones that did not want to become federal citizens, they got disenfranchised. So disenfranchised means that you cannot vote, and therefore you cannot be lawfully represented. So what we're looking at, I'm going to say this again, out of Section 2 of the 14th Amendment, it says, the basis of representation therein shall be reduced in the proportion in which the number of such male citizens shall bear to the whole number of male citizens. So bear, out of the American Heritage Dictionary, bear means to be accountable for, assume, or to exert pressure, force, or influence. So LB's position is that because the 14th Amendment forced the American states to change the way they held their elections, it's saying that these definitions to bear means that the ones voting, the ones that are being represented, are actually forcing the rest of us to recognize the system, right?
Basically, that's what I've figured out, yes.
Sure, that's what it's definitely saying. So, there's another definition in Bouvier's Law Dictionary. So remember, this article is criminal ignorance. So whether you accept or object, but haven't made the record of objection, you're a bearer. Listen to this. Bearers. This is Bouvier's Law Dictionary. Such as bear down or oppress others. Maintainers. So to not object to this system or to even participate in voting, even if it's for a great guy like Ron Paul, or even if it was for a great guy back in 2004 for Michael Bagnerick, who we endorse. We believe that he's dead on a lot of issues, and we respect Ron Paul as well at state nationals. But unfortunately, to participate in that body politic, you're a bearer. So you're maintaining the system pursuant to the Bouvier's Law Dictionary definition, bearers, such as bear down or oppress others. Now, how am I being oppressed? How am I being forced by these people? Well, if I don't have a driver's license, then I could get maced, I can get tased, I can get shot. There's a lot of things that can happen to me that are very unfavorable for my well-being.
No, those are the modern or contemporary things. Those are the modern or contemporary issues.
Sure.
The major thing is everyone's being considered as a legal entity under the 14th Amendment.
Ah, yes.
And we're forced into these positions and defending them because the bulk or the sheep have followed this illegal governmental system, illegitimate governmental system, and it's because the masses are asses, we're thrown into the same pot as these people. So God is not a respecter of persons in the Bible. It states that. And that's what they're treating us as, is legal entities instead of men and women under the common law. So we're forced into that. Yeah, we're being forced into it by policy. By the bearers, the ones that are bearing. By the bearers, yes, the socialists, the communists, the ones who want one nation under fraud. That's the main issue I see. And it goes along with what you said. Some of the traffic issues are all private law, and they're imposed against us, which applies to legal entities under private law system. That's created all under the 14th Amendment via the federal government and the state governments. And here we look at Bouvier's dictionary definition, sedition, crimes. Definition, here it goes. Bouvier's Law Dictionary, 1856, sedition, crimes. The raising commotions or disturbances in the state. It is a revolt against legitimate authority. The distinction between sedition and treason consists in this, that though its ultimate object is a violation of the public peace, or at least such a course of measures as evidently engenders it, yet it does not aim at direct and open violence against laws,
or the subversion of the Constitution. So sedition is a quiet war in a way, isn't it, LB?
Oh, definitely a quiet war.
There's actually a book, folks. You probably looked it up. Anybody that's followed William Cooper, and he's definitely one of my heroes. The book, Behold a Pale Horse.
Yes. The late William Cooper.
The late William Cooper, God bless him.
Yeah.
He had a book called Behold a Pale Horse. In that book, evidently the story behind it was there was this manual called Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. That was the title of it. Evidently it was written by some elites for maybe a Bilderberger conference, we're not sure. But evidently there was this manual that was found in a copier at a government sale selling government copiers.
That's the story anyway.
That's the story. But when you read it, it's really more modern, but LB cued off of that concept in the Red Amendment, and he got to the root that the real quiet war started with the 14th Amendment. And that wasn't the position of the book that William Cooper unearthed, but really the root of it started with that. And everything else is kind of, rotten fruit of that rotten 14th Amendment tree. This wasn't treason per se. We could say that the Reconstruction and implementing the 14th Amendment and the 14th Amendment itself would be more sedition, in that to participate or recognize that body politic, you're in sedition and rebellion quietly, even though there's no violence pursuant to the definition of sedition. And so there's two definitions, folks, we went over. Bearer and sedition, all tied in with Section 2 of the 14th Amendment. And probably at a later time, we're going to show you how the 13th Amendment actually makes you a slave pursuant to the 14th Amendment, right? Wouldn't you say that, LB?
Yes, well, through operational law.
Right, through an operational law, right.
Yeah, through operational law and silence it does. But technically no one challenges it, so it just kind of operates silently. So
this 14th Amendment subverted the original state citizenry of the original states and installed federal citizens. That's what we're saying, folks. That's what it did. These federal citizens are now in sedition. They're bearers. They're oppressing us that want a lawful state body politic that's not populated with federal citizens in a lot of ways. And these state officials are now elected by federal citizens through the 14th Amendment. So you cannot vote unless you check that box that says, are you a U.S. citizen? The word they're using, U.S. citizen, is under Title 8. If you look at the Immigration and Nationality Acts through Title 8, Title 8 uses 14th Amendment language to define U.S. citizens. So the basis of Title 8 U.S. citizenship, that particular U.S. citizenship box that you check on your voter's registration and your driver's license, all that goes to Title 8, and then eventually goes to the Nationality Act, which is in the statutes at large, which ultimately uses language in the 14th Amendment. So there's your circuitous path of law. Constitution, statutes at large, Title 8. Now, this is a case that LB uses a lot regarding the new political system established under the 14th Amendment. It's U.S. versus Cruikshank, Cruikshank. The citizen cannot complain because he has voluntarily submitted himself to such a form of government. What they mean by such a form of government, folks, is the new one. He owes allegiance to the two departments, so to speak, and within their respective spheres must pay the penalties. See, before the 14th Amendment, it was unheard of for somebody to claim the federal Constitution for rights. They couldn't. It'd be ridiculous because you were presumed to be under your state's constitution. The federal Constitution only applied to the states, governments, not to the people. But now here in Cruikshank, they're saying that, no, you owe allegiance to the federal government because they're using the word citizen. The citizen cannot complain. He must pay the penalties. So the question raised in criminal ignorance is, could the penalties that you're paying for, could it be the criminal act of treason or sedition against the sovereign authority of the lawful body politic of each state that was under the original constitutional system of the Union? So we're saying, is the crime sedition against the governmental system that existed prior to the Reconstruction Acts and the insurgent 14th Amendment?
I'd say it is, but they're not going to prosecute for that because it's their secret.
They're silently prosecuting, though. We'll be back, folks.
Yeah, we'll be back in a few minutes. I got a couple announcements, and this is The Ultimate Remedy. My name's L.B. Bork. Stay tuned. Well, we're back. This is The Ultimate Remedy. We're talking with Jeff from Florida tonight. My name's L.B. Bork. We're going over how people have been deceived to fall for this false nation the last 140 years. It's been a fraud. People have been tricked into it. It's illegal, unlawful for the people that are participating. I guess you could construe it to be legal, but they are rebelling against the original system. A lot of people have no idea that this is going on, and they've been deceived. They're rebelling against God because they're being treated as legal entities instead of men and women, as the common law provided. They're being manipulated by the legislatures. This whole thing is evil. It's satanic in my book, in my eyes. It's just all evil and bad, and anyone that participates in this is, I don't know. I'm not going to go into character assassinations, but that's what it would about boiled down to. I had someone call me today. I think he was about 28 years old. He's reading the book now, and he's only 40 pages into the 180 pages. I think it's 189, 87, something like that. But he said, why aren't people screaming about this? Why hasn't Alex Jones had you on the show? By the way, Scooter McGee called me. I'm going to be on his 2-hour show next Wednesday. Again, out in Colorado. So that's Scooter McGee. Look him up on the internet. I'll be on there again, like I said, next Wednesday. But when he read the book, someone gave him the book, and he said he couldn't put it down, and he can't believe how bad we've been screwed over. And I'm telling you, folks, if you don't tell people about this book very soon and get copies to everyone, we're going to be done. I mean, we're almost out of time, if there's any time left at all. People have to understand how bad they've been screwed over and taken advantage of. Anyway, having said all that, Jeff, are you still there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, continue with your...
well, actually, I'm wrapping it up on this article. But
right.
The issue is, are you criminally ignorant? Are you aware that you're engaged in a crime by not doing anything about claiming your lawful state nationality and objecting to and showing them that you don't recognize them as legitimate? So you've really disenfranchised yourself from the original state body politic, and you pledge allegiance to this. So I guess the concept of legal fiction is really the thrust of this, that you were converted from being of the people into being a person, and of this body politic of persons rather than the people. And even people can be used singular, right, LB? Like when they say a people?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
It means a living, breathing, living soul is a people. Or peoples is more than one living, breathing soul existing. But if you look in the U.S. code, your state statutes, when I say code, I mean statutes, and they never use the word people or peoples, do they? They use person.
No. Yeah, they use person all the time. That's the key word for the law of persons, which is a private law, which is entity law. They lump people into being equivalent to corporations. Corporations now have same property rights or any other rights as people do. That's the evilness of this whole system. It was developed by the Roman Empire, and it's the same system that they used, and it's not a good system.
So there's a presumption, really, though, that these people represent you, whether you agree with them or not. And you have to make this. What we're saying here at State Nationals, we make an administrative record publicly that we object to their monetary system, their political system, their legal system. And we use a solid grounding in law that consists of the Constitution, acts of Congress, i.e. the statutes at large, and not U.S. code. That's not the law. U.S. code is not the law. The statutes at large is the law. And we show them that, no, there's no way you guys could be representing us, and this is why. And so they come up with this code, persons, under the presumption that you're one of them. You're one of their cows. So that's the crux of it, as far as the way that they that's all they use is statutes. So whether it's for a hunting and fishing license, right? Property tax, your car tag, the tag on your car, all these things, by accepting that system, you're actually giving them equitable title, right, LB?
Yes.
And could you go into that equitable title? What does that mean, really?
Yeah, it's basically where the government has partial interest in your property.
Right. In equity, though, not in law. See, that's the thing.
Yes.
Because you are accepting their unlawful system, in equity, you're one of their slaves. I guess why don't we just go into that whole 13th Amendment? Let's read the 13th Amendment. Why not tie that in, huh? Into the section 2.
Do you have a copy of it pulled up? I don't.
I'm fixing to, as we say here in Florida.
Fixing to. How are things down there? It's really warm up here this week.
Yeah, nice breeze here, about 72 degrees. I love it.
Oh, by the way, folks, we're getting cards made up for notmygovernment.us. If you want to drop $5 in an envelope, we'll send you 100 of them. They're nice cards with basically the content of the front page of notmygovernment.us on it. We send that to PAC, POB 313, Keeler, Wisconsin, 53812. And we'll send you 100 of those cards. You can hand them out to friends. It's got the website URL on it. It'll help get people educated on to what's going on. This illegitimate government. It has been for 140 years. And because of operation of law, we have remedy. The 14th Amendment creates operation of law. So unlike the original Constitution, where they put it in place and it took off and it was basically accepted by custom and usage of the people, this one's This situation is different. It operates off operational law, so it can be challenged on an individual basis or just totally. The thing people don't understand is the more they participate and accept this government, they'll stay in perpetual debt, and they'll be subject to all the treaties that this illegal or illegitimate United States enters into.
Well, I have Amendment 13 dug up. I like how the title of it, or I guess the commonly accepted title, maybe not officially, they call it slavery abolished. Passed by Congress January 31st, 1865.
Yeah, slavery abolished and instituted. The 14th Amendment.
Ratified December 6th, 1865. And here we go. Quote from the 13th Amendment. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Now, so they're saying that slavery or involuntary servitude is actually legitimate within the United States if it's for punishment of a crime, whereas the party has been duly convicted. Now, that duly convicted, there's really no, I mean, if you wanted to be technical about this, there's no real statutory definition of that, or let's say case law that really defines that, right? It's kind of wide open, whatever duly convicted means. So, technically speaking, remember, what was it? That Bill of Attainder? Let me read that quote about, okay, Andrew Johnson, folks, I went over this last week. He vetoed the Reconstruction Acts, which imposed the 14th Amendment. And he said this about, he said that the Reconstruction Act was a Bill of Attainder. Now, a Bill of Attainder is a bill that convicts people, right, Albie?
Yes.
It's a conviction, but it's not just it doesn't name names. It doesn't say who, what, when, why, where. It's just a blanket conviction. That's a Bill of Attainder, and that's against the law. That's against constitutional law. In somewhere in Article 1, Section 8, one of the clauses, it mentions that Bill of Attainders are forbidden. However, we've proven through the past few shows how the Reconstruction Act was a Bill of Attainder. Here's a Bill of Attainder against 9 million people at once. It is based upon an accusation so vague as to be scarcely intelligible and found to be true upon no credible evidence. So, this 39th Congress, folks, just declared that all of the southern states were in rebellion, even though it was in times of peace that the president proclaimed. It was way after the Civil War. But they went ahead and instituted an act of war through the Reconstruction Act. They even called it that, an article of war. And they duly convicted in this 13th Amendment could mean anything. It could mean that. Neither slavery or nor involuntary servitude except as punishment for a crime. So, remember, the crime is where? Section 2 of the 14th Amendment, right? So, this Constitution, after the 14th Amendment, is saying that you're a slave. We can hold you in involuntary servitude because you're not objecting to this martial law instituted body politic under the 14th Amendment. So now there is a movement out there, right? I guess I'll mention his name, little name names. Eric Williams. His position is, oh no, you guys can't do this because you'll be holding me in involuntary servitude. You can't do that. Well, under the color of law, they really can if you have not laid a record of your status. And that's the position of state nationals, that you are consenting. They're getting jurisdiction by your consent, which is silence. You're not doing anything about this, folks. Complaining about the Federal Reserve, about income taxes, all of that are rotten fruits of a 14th Amendment body politic, which got the Federal Reserve passed, the Federal Reserve Act passed, which got the 16th Amendment.
16th Amendment.
Right.
That's why they ignore everything basically at will, because the Constitution is pretty much out the door.
Yep.
They can look at it, or they don't have to look at it.
Sure. So, really, to argue the Federal Reserve being abolished, the IRS being abolished, the 16th Amendment not being properly ratified, or whatever, or I guess there's a lot of other cases that I used to read when I was a tax protester. Was it the Bruce Shaber case? All these cases that talk about the definition of income. Guys, going into that without addressing the status issue, you're just spinning your wheels. You're nipping at branches. Because the whole time you're arguing this, you're accepting their 14th Amendment system. And therefore, they can hold you in involuntary servitude, because in Section 4 of the 14th Amendment, it says the federal debt shall not be questioned. And you're questioning it as a 13th Amendment slave pursuant to the crime that you're committing in Section 2 of the 14th Amendment. That's how we're connecting the dots. And again, if somebody's just tuning in, and at the expense of being repetitive, the book, The Red Amendment, is an in-law treatise and expose of the exact mechanics of the 14th Amendment, its implications, everything, and it's what it's doing expressly to you, and it gives you the whole theory behind that. Now, we do have a process that we use to opt out, but it's not in that book. See, a lot of people, LB, they think that your book is like a like a training manual to teach you how to expatriate.
No, it's not. It's
right.
The overview and the nuts and bolts. There's enough information in there if you choose to do it yourself, but the ABCs are not in there because we would have people profiteering off the information, or doing it wrong, or mixing it with all kinds of other garbage.
And folks, we've had that happen to us already. We've had that happen to us already on more than one occasion. And one guy's in jail now. We're not going to mention his name. But he did the process. Then he decided to try to steal this information and use it for his own seminars. And then he started incorporating UCC stuff. He was arguing, I forget what it was. What was it, that OMB number on the IRS form thing, on the 1040? He was going to that. He winds up in jail. So that's why we don't publicly post how to do the process, because there's people that are loose cannons. And in fact, I'll tell you what, I did not do this process until I read the Red Amendment. I read the Red Amendment. I said, you know what, this is the right thing to do, because I don't want to be a criminal anymore or be presumed to be one. I don't want to be involved in their quiet war. I want to be neutral and an alien to their system. I mean, we ignore them. We have an organized system of ignoring them, but at the same time, we want them to know who we are and what we're doing, because they have not formally recognized us as state nationals. The formula of the 14th Amendment, Section 2, we're just going to hammer this, folks, till the time runs out. So the formula, okay, in Section 1 of the 14th Amendment, it sets forth that all people are citizens of the United States under legal fiction, i.e. federal citizens. The second thing it does, it establishes a new apportionment for the inhabitants of the several states, which we went over in Section 2. It enfranchises these new federal citizens, and then it disenfranchises the people who were once state citizens who cannot be anymore because their body politics have been displaced. So 4 things. Sets forth the citizen of the United States legal fiction, establishes a new apportionment for these people, a new representation. It enfranchises them so they can vote, and then it disenfranchises those people that want to retain their state's nationality status, don't want to participate, and it disenfranchises them from voting. So the formula is creating a new body politic. The state citizens that are the members under the original constitutional system, they have to be tricked into participating. So how are they tricked? They don't know what they don't know what the definition. They don't know what a federal citizen is under the 14th Amendment. And so when they check that box, are you a U.S. citizen, on their voting registration, they check it, right? So they're tricked into it. And then they become, I guess even the people in government, you can consider them to be insurgent. And here's the definition of insurgent. Is this out of Webster's, LB? Yeah.
Yes, it's Webster's 1828.
1828. Yes. Insurgent. A person who rises in opposition to civil or political authority, one who openly and actively resists the execution of laws. An insurgent differs from a rebel. The insurgent opposes the execution of a particular law or laws. A rebel attempts to overthrow or change government, or he revolts and attempts to place his country under another authority. All rebels are insurgents, but all insurgents are not rebels. So, premise is that the people in your legislature that are federal citizens, the congressmen, they are insurgents. They're opposing the original Constitution by accepting this false status, this federal status that emanates out of Washington, D.C. They're favoring that over their state nationality status. So that makes them insurgent. But the rebels are the ones that are voting for them. Wouldn't you say that's kind of what you're getting at in your book?
Yes.
So the rebel, here's the definition again. A rebel attempts to overthrow or change government, or he revolts and attempts to place his country under another authority. I think that's more accurate, right? That part of the definition.
Yes.
So they're putting their country, that means their state, not the United States is not a country. The country is an individual state. So the United States is countries, 50 countries. So these people are placing it under the singular power of Washington, D.C., because even the state legislatures are all federal citizens, not state citizens. Their allegiance is to Washington, D.C. first.
There you go. We're out of time, Jeff.
Yep.
Well, thanks for tuning in. We're going to have Brother Gregory on next week for sure. This has been The Ultimate Remedy. Come back next week. Thanks.